Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Naruto signed the contract to become a Ghost Rider? Before I start, please do support for more awesome content and subscribe my channel and like this video. Go support and follow the Toby Wants a Cookie for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story, link in the description. It was the card that woke him up. That damn thing was worse than any alarm clock he'd ever owned. There was no assault, loud noises or earth-shaking vibrations, just a business card that sent waves of awareness flowing through his body. The card was black and void of any marks or other defining features. When it was time for him to wake though, a large M would burn into the card, a timid flame outlining the letter. As ordinary as it may have seemed, this was a card that held a great sort of power. His eyes shot open when its song began, forcing him to sit up and run his fingers through his spiky blonde hair. He reached over on the bedside table and picked it up, holding it in his hands for a few moments before he blew out the flame, the symbol leaving along with it. The young man, who was barely old enough to drink, wore nothing as he climbed out of bed, which was fine, since the curtains were drawn. Setting the card back on the table, the young man caught a glimpse of his wallet, which was still open from when he'd thrown it on the table last night. Inside was a card with all the information you could ever need about him. Naruto Uzumaki, age 21, blue eyes and 180 pounds, all of which was pure muscle, though the driver license didn't say that. His wallet was still open because he'd been more interested in other things when he walked in, particularly the beautiful woman who'd been sleeping in bed next to him. Her name was Jennifer Walters, though most of the world knew her as She-Hulk. She stood well over 6.5 feet tall and had green skin with hair to match. A turn off for some men, but nothing Naruto couldn't get past. He couldn't help but smile as she woke up, throwing the covers off herself and stepping out of bed. Oh boy, that was some night we had, huh? I didn't hurt you too much, did I? When things get hot and heavy, I can lose control sometimes. You almost crushed my pelvis a couple of times, but it was worth it. I'm a fast healer anyways, Naruto said, enjoying that fact that she wasn't wearing any clothes either. She-Hulk had the body of goddess, with curves that would make a man weak in the knees. My god, you are beautiful in the morning. The compliment didn't go unappreciated. Jennifer walked over to him, grabbed him by the hip, pulling his body up against hers. Naruto went in for it, which she quickly accepted. This was the state they'd been in for a matter of minutes before they pulled apart for air. She-Hulk was panting for air as she said, "That was my little thank you for going downtown without being asked. Most guys act like you're asking them to give a kindy when you bring up oral. After the crazy shit you did for me last night, I'd be an asshole not to," Naruto replied. This next part of the conversation had him nervous, but he decided just to go for it. "So, we've been doing this for a while now, and it's been great and all, but I was thinking." "Let me stop you right there," she interrupted him by putting a finger to his mouth. She-Hulk knew where he was headed. "I told you. No dates. First off, I'm green. So, unless you want people staring at us, then we can't exactly go to a 5-star restaurant for dinner. Second, you know I'm just not looking for a relationship right now. My law firm is just getting off the ground and it's a lot of work keeping everything straight. I'm thankful for the stress relief, but I just can't commit to a relationship right now, and I won't stop you from looking for one either." Naruto nodded, forcing a smile. "You're right. It's probably not what's best for either of us right now." "Aw, don't get all mopey on me," Jennifer pouted. "Would it help if I said I was about to take a shower and need help washing up?" That was an offer no man could refuse. "Sure, but we'll have to make it a quickie. Boss won't like me showing up for work late. The wrecking crew is back in town and he needs to see their boss." She-Hulk didn't see it as much of a problem. She knew who Naruto was and didn't figure the wrecking crew would be able to do much to him, those punks. "We've got more than enough time for some fun before they end up doing any real damage. Come on, let's go get dirty in the place we're supposed to get clean." "Hey man, is it time yet? I'm getting anxious over here," Pillardriver, a blonde mountain of a man, grumbled, his hands shaking in the pockets of his sweater. Thunderball, who was just a tad smaller than Pillardriver, scanned the bank and its various patrons before running his fingers through his jet black buzz cut. "Yeah, this is probably as quiet as this place is gonna get. We wait much longer and it'll be lunch hour. We'll have too many asshole deal with if it gets there." "I got my gauntlets and helmet ready, boss." Bulldozer, a bald man roughly Thunderball size, whispered to the group's leader, smacking a large duffel bag as he did. "Let's do this thing already." The previously mentioned boss smiled at his gang's enthusiasm. He was Wrecker, the aptly named leader of the wrecking crew, and while he might have been the smallest member of the crew, he more than made up for it in raw skill and charisma. "Alright, boys, get the gear out. We've got a withdrawal to make." The groan came from across the room. "Oog. Really? You're going with that tired line? God, I swear, if one more bank robber makes that corny ass joke, I'm gonna withdraw their spine from their body." "Oh really? Looks like we got a hero here, huh fellas?" the wrecker asked his crew. He snatched a duffel bag from Bulldozer, unzipping it to pull out an almost comically large crowbar. He then unzipped his sweatshirt to show off a thin layer of body armor, the kind that might slow down a bullet or dull the effect of a punch. "So, Mr. Hero, you gonna come and give us trouble, or are you gonna play it smart? Shut that big fat mouth." "First off, I ain't a hero in any sense of the word," the voice corrected him, the owner slowly making his way to the center of the bank, so he was visible. It was of course Naruto Uzumaki, who wore a pair of jeans, a white t-shirt, biker gloves, and a leather jacket. He glared as the rest of the crew got their gear from that same duffel bag, and second off, do me a favor and tell me which one of you limpets is the wrecker. I got something special for him. Thunderball had retrieved his ball and chain, swinging the massive sphere of lead above his as fast as he could, while Bulldozer slid on his steel gauntlets and helmet. Only Pillardriver didn't have any gear, and unfortunately, that meant he could focus on talking. "Hey, boss, how come this guy's so interested in you?" "I don't know, Dumbus, but thanks for making sure he knows exactly who I am," Wrecker snapped, clutching more tightly to his crowbar. "Fine, so this asshole knows who I am. Now what's he gonna do about it?" Naruto wouldn't make them wait long for answer. A chain fell from his arm, one that looked like it should have been too heavy for the young blonde to lug around on his arm. As the wrecking crew would soon see, Naruto had no issue pulling off unbelievable feats with it. His arm shot forward too fast for the human eye to see, sending the chain hurling towards the wrecker. It made contact with his crowbar and wrapped around it several times. That was impressive enough on its own, but it's what came next that really left everyone in awe. Starting at the end of the chain, the end Naruto was holding to be exact, flame began to engulf the weapon and shoot all the way down to the section wrapped around the wrecker's crowbar. Hiding a growing sense of regret, the wrecker looked up at Naruto, only to have his fears confirmed. "You've gotta be in with me." The same flame that engulfed the chain engulfed Naruto as well, transforming him from his Uzumaki self into the one and only Ghost Rider. His face no longer contained any flesh, leaving only a burning skull in its place. The rest of his body burned in the same way, only that couldn't be seen under his clothing, which were untouched by the flame. With the Ghost Rider out and ready to play, it was time for the wrecking crew to see what he could do. "Time to play, boys. Let's see if you can entertain me for a while." "We need to get thee out of here," the wrecker called, but it was only in vain. He soon felt the sting of his own crowbar smacking him across the face as the Ghost Rider jerked his chain in every which direction to make sure the action was repeated over and over again. Gah. Ow. Shit. Damn it. That hurts. "It's supposed to," Naruto growled. He couldn't beat the wrecker much more, as that could cause the poor schmuck brain damage, and Naruto's boss still needed him, so the Ghost Rider gave his chain one last mighty jerk to send his foe flying into a wall. The wrecker smacked his back on the unforgiving marble before falling face first onto the floor. With him out cold, or at least in enough pain that he wouldn't be getting up anytime soon, the Ghost Rider turned his attention to the others. Not much fun there. "Alright, who's next?" Bulldozer went charging for him. "I'm gonna crush that stupid skull into dust." The metal-clad fist came charging at Naruto, who didn't so much as flinch. He caught the attack before it came anywhere near his skull. Bulldozer reacted almost instantly, using his other hand to try for counter-attack. The Ghost Rider caught that as well. Insanity. Doing the same thing and expecting different results. "Here, let me try to help cure you." Hey. "Let go, Amy," Bulldozer commanded, unable to break free of Naruto's grip. His metal gauntlets began to heat up to the point that they were burning his skin. "Oh god, what are you doing?" The metal became so hot that it started melting on Bulldozer's skin, rendering his hands useless. Naruto chuckled, "Making you sane. You can't try and smack me anymore. In fact, I don't know if you're ever going to smack anyone ever again." "Get off of him," Pillardriver bellowed as he rushed towards the Ghost Rider. A bad move if ever there was one. The Ghost Rider tossed Bulldozer to the side, the villain still in untold amounts of pain, and let Pillardriver get as close to him as possible before lifting up his leg and putting a boot right in the man's stomach, knocking the air out of him. Once immobilized, Naruto grabbed Pillardriver by his skull, looking directly into his foe's eyes. "Tell me something, my friend, are you ready for your judgment? If your soul is clean and pure, which I highly doubt, this should be quick and almost painless, but, in the more likely event that you've been a rat bastard all your life, this is gonna sting a little, make that a lot, actually. Hahaha." Pillardriver felt a burning sensation crawling under his skin. It started out slow, but quickly grew into a level of pain he'd never felt before. Fire began to encase his soul, fueled by the weight of every sin he'd ever committed. That fire spread throughout his entire body, burning hotter and more excruciatingly than any flame from Earth ever could have. This was hellfire, and it was consuming every part of him in a blaze no one in the bank would ever be able to forget. Please, someone help me." "There's no one to help you where you're going," the Ghost Rider revealed before the fool in front of him crumbled into nothing but ash. Pillardriver was dead. His friend weren't exactly weeping over his loss, as the wrecker remained groaning on the ground, while Bulldozer and Thunderball fled from the bank, the latter the only member left unscathed. What would become of the two of them, Naruto didn't care to know. One hadn't even fought him, while the other would probably end up threatening some poor doctor to try and fix his hands. Only one member of the wrecking crew mattered now, and Naruto had him in hand. He grabbed that fool, along with his crowbar, and made his way out to the street, where he expected his boss would be waiting. The crowd was no doubt watching him and gawking at the carnage Naruto had left behind, but it didn't matter. His job was finished, time for you to meet someone real special, Wrecker, the kinda guy who knows how to make a first impression. Trust me. Naruto walked to the coffee stand on the bustling Los Angeles street corner, with a skip in his step and a grin on his face. He pulled out his wallet and handed the cashier his card, amazed at the fact that there was no line. The vendor, on the other hand, was a little concerned that the man who just walked up to him had seconds ago tied an unconscious criminal to a street lamp. He'd wisely decided not to question it as Naruto placed his order. Well, would you look at that? Looks like I got lucky twice this morning. I need a large, black coffee, and I'm buying for the guy behind me too. You want something, boss? I'll have the same, thanks, came a dry voice behind him that then mumbled so now one, but Naruto could hear, awful nice of you to pay, considering that card is all my money. Taking the two coffees, Naruto handed one to the man behind him, and they began to walk down the street and over to the wrecker, who had only just begun to stir. You're a mystical being who can do almost anything. I'd be shocked if that card even went to an actual bank account. Knowing you, the card probably just screws with the computer system or something. Don't try and guilt trip me, asshole. Naruto's companion didn't say a word, instead smirking and drinking the scalding hot coffee without so much as a flinch. The man was roughly 5 feet 10 inches tall, decently built, with jet black hair that was slicked back. Small touches of gray were tucked behind his ears. His eyes were a dark red, and he wore a custom-made suit that was almost entirely black, with the exception of a red tie and black overcoat to top it all of. There was an intimidating air around him, not that it seemed to be affecting Naruto. Either way, you know I don't like to be kept waiting. Though I must admit, it'd be hard to turn down an evening with the kind of woman you did. Like you wouldn't believe, Naruto remarked, watching the wrecker as he started to open his eyes. So, what exactly do you want with this guy anyways? I need to have a little conversation him, that's all you need to know, the man replied, reaching down and placing a hand on the wrecker's head. There's a good chance I won't be in touch for the next couple of days. Consider it a vacation. Just be ready for things to get hairy once I get back, alright? Naruto took a sip of his coffee, not caring about the heat as it went down, and chose not to respond. It wouldn't have mattered what he said, his boss didn't allow disobedience of any kind. So, the Ghost Rider merely looked on as his boss vanished in a burst of flame, taking the wrecker right along with him. The flame had never been necessary for the teleportation, but Naruto had to admit there was some damn good style to it. With the boss gone, the young rider snapped his fingers and waited, tapping his foot while the vendor from before watched in utter confusion. The roaring engine sounded off in the streets, signaling the arrival of Naruto's ride. A gorgeous orange motorcycle with black detailing and finely polished chrome around the rims. It had no rider atop of it as it pulled to Naruto, who wasted no time in hopping right on. Still, the vendor stared at him, making Naruto chuckle. He couldn't resist playing with the man at least a little. What, you're a coffee vendor-in-law? You telling me you don't see shit like this every day? Those were the last words he spoke before he hit the gas and drove off to God only knew where. It was always best for Naruto to end on some humor after he met up with him. The rotten bastard he'd come here to see, a twisted beast who preyed on those at their most vulnerable, and monster who was damn near impossible to outsmart. That was who Naruto worked for, and that was who Naruto had met in Purgatory all those years ago. He was groggy when he woke up. But then, who wouldn't be? It's not every day someone wakes up from their own death. Oh man, it feels like Sakura beat me over the head about 1,000 times, Naruto, a then 13-year-old boy groaned as he sat up and rubbed the back of his aching skull. Where the hell am I? A reasonable question, seeing as the last thing he could remember was the cold, unforgiving waters found in the Valley of the End. Those waters were nowhere to be seen now, replaced by a forest with fog that looked thick enough to swallow you up whole. Leaves crunched under Naruto's body as he stood up to try and get his bearings. Hello? Is anybody out there? My name's Naruto Uzumaki. That is a doornail, a calm voice interrupted him from behind. Naruto whipped around to see who it was and found a man sitting on a nearby stump, rolling himself a cigarette. Well, he was attempting to anyways, but most of the tobacco was falling to the forest floor. Ah, son of a bitch. Kid, you know how to roll a cigarette? I can't seem to get it. Naruto blinked a couple of times. He didn't know what to make of this man, with slick back hair and fine suit, but there was no one else around to assist him, meaning Naruto would have to take what he can get. Walking over to the old man, he snatched the tobacco and paper from him. Sure, I've seen people back in my village do it all the time. But you're gonna have to explain what's going on to me if I do it, you creep. The man shrugged. Alright, Naruto, we'll do this your way. But my name's not Creep. His final words came with a much greater intensity, and you'd be smart to make sure you never call me anything remotely close to it ever again. Well fine, then what should I call you? I've been called more than a few different things over the years, but your case, I think Mephisto should do the trick. Mephisto, huh? Naruto asked, the cigarette now rolled and ready. So, Mephisto, you gonna explain what's going on or what? Mephisto took the cigarette, smiling at the boy. He lowered it down to his fingertips, getting as close as he could to open end, and flicked them together, creating a spark for just an instant. It was enough to light the damn thing and make Naruto jump back, exactly what Mephisto had been going for. There's not much to tell, really. You got in a bit of tussle with your friend, Sasuke, and things went a little too far, and now you're on the other side. Like I said before, you're as dead as a doornail. Well, maybe not as a doornail. Doornails don't really have any way of coming alive. Hold on, dead. Naruto interrupted, what do you mean I'm dead? How can I be dead when I'm right here? Well, considering that right here is purgatory, I'm gonna go ahead and say that being dead is the only way you could be right here. Come on, kid, you took a lightning bolt arm to the what did you expect? Naruto began to back away, his mind reeling, this is a dream or a freaking nightmare. There's no way that this could be real. With a puff of his cigarette, Mephisto replied, yep, this is how I thought you'd react. It's how everyone reacts really, don't feel special. Now, if you were a regular person, I'd spend the next hour hemming and hawing, trying to find some way to make them see the situation clearly, but with you, there's a much simpler answer. Tell me something, Naruto, how are you feeling? What the hell kind of question is that? I'm feeling different. Naruto had realized what Mephisto was getting at mid-sentence, the Kyuubi's power, I can't feel it anymore. Mephisto took another puff, precisely, and you know what I mean, don't you? Her power is gone. Kurama has left your body and taken her immense sum of energy with her. The only way that could be possible is if you were dead, severing your connection. Wait, the Kyuubi's a girl. And her name is Kurama. Naruto's mind was reeling, how do you know all this? I know of all the demons as powerful as her, whether they're a part of my universe or not. Now, Kurama's cycle will continue. She will be reborn somewhere in your world years from now and be sealed away inside some other poor sap. Her miserable life gets dragged on, along with her suffering and longing for freedom. And you, my young friend, will move on to the afterlife, wherever it is your universe deems you deserve to go. Naruto was panicking by this point. Someone his age being face to face with their own mortality was bound to do so, but I don't want to die. I haven't even had a girl yet. Or had a drink. Or become Hokage. Or. Settle down, child. That's why I'm here, Mephisto said, a grin growing on his face. I'm here because you don't have to die, because Kurama does not have to live on as a prisoner, and because you have a chance at a new life, free of all the bullshit you had to deal with in the previous one. I don't. Mephisto chuckled, no, you don't. I have another way, a better way, a way that can benefit both of us. That is, of course, if you're interested. Now that sounded good. In fact, it sounded downright great, and that was the problem. Naruto may have been young, but despite what his teachers may have thought, he wasn't stupid. What's the catch? You keep talking about demons and the underworld. Something tells me you aren't one of the good guys. The good guys? After all you've been through, you really buy into that crap? Mephisto asked. Naruto's face didn't falter, which told the underworld dweller he had his work cut out for him. Right and wrong, good and evil, shit, rules in general, they're all bullshit. They're concepts created by morons who know they can't outsmart people like me. Man, that sounds really cool when you put it like that. Too bad the all adults I hear who sound like that are assholes. This kid was a real loudmouth. He wouldn't listen to a word of something if he thought you were trying to bullshit him. Mephisto like that in a man, well I'll be damned. I've seen that speech work on people 3 times your age. Looks like I'll need another way to convince you. Naruto was already beginning to turn around, forget it. I'd rather take my chances in with a Shinigami than work for you. Aw, but what about Kurama? Are you just gonna leave her high and dry? Mephisto asked. It got Naruto to stop and look back at him. She's been bouncing from prison to prison for what, centuries now? And she never even committed a crime. The poor thing. Are you really gonna let her stay like that? Not to mention all the people you could help with the kind of power I'm offering you. You're giving up all that to go off into the great unknown. There was a moment of silence, a long one. A sigh escaped Naruto's s. Help people how exactly? Mephisto stood up. He began to circle Naruto, eyeing him up like a wolf with some poor rabbit. Your job, should you take what I'm offering you, will be to bring me the souls of the nastiest, cruelest people you can imagine. You'd be saving so many lives by getting rid of people like them. Then of course there's Kurama again. A small trace of her power still lies within you. I can use it to bring her into my world too. There's no telling where she'll end up, granted. With you, I've got the body right in front of me, and it's a body I'll have a contract on. All I can do for Kurama is pull her power here and wait for her to take a physical form. We'll track her down though, I promise. She won't be a prisoner of your world anymore. That actually doesn't sound that bad, Naruto thought out loud, but how do I know you'll hold up your end of the bargain? That's what this little beauty is for, Mephisto said before pulling the cigarette out of his mouth. It looked as though it hadn't shrunk in the least. That was strange enough on its own, but it only gets stranger from there. Mephisto flicked the cigarette, and the next thing Naruto knew, it began to unravel like a scroll. Holding the scroll out of the boy, Mephisto showed off the scribbles of cursive fire that lined the scroll. This will be our contract. Go ahead and look it over. It states that, in no uncertain terms, the people you're bringing in for me have to have souls black enough to deemed worthy of the underworld. In fact, you won't even have to kill some of them. You'll just bring them to me to answer question or pay a debt, that's all. And in exchange, you get the powers of the Ghost Rider. Can you imagine it? You, with all the powers of the underworld. Not to mention you can save Kurama and oh, what else was there? Oh, right, you won't have to die. Naruto was reading the contract as Mephisto spoke. Everything he'd spoken of was in there. The more Naruto thought about it, the more conflicted he became. He still didn't like the demented look in Mephisto's eyes too. I don't know. Mephisto took Naruto's hand. The boy tried to protest, but he wasn't anywhere near fast enough. With a sharpened thumbnail, Mephisto drew blood from Naruto's thumb and brought down to the contract. Come on, what's there to think about? You can help people and save Kurama from an eternity of misery. You don't want to be selfish, do you? What? No, of course not, Naruto snapped. Mephisto had let go of his hand just as it was about to the touch bottom of the contract where Naruto's signature was supposed to go. The boy's eyes scanned the contract as a feeling began to wash over him. He wasn't sure what it was exactly. Part of it felt like fear of his own death, and part of it felt like guilt at being able to help people and turning a blind eye. His hand inched towards the signature until the blood began to touch it. It almost felt like something else controlled Naruto's hand while he made his signature. This was Naruto's choice though, and he knew that when he put the final touch on his signature. Did I do it? The feeling of pride washed over Mephisto. He took out his tobacco and cigarette paper and rolled himself a smoke, something Naruto noted he had no trouble doing on his own this time. You did great, Naruto. Now, let us begin. Before Naruto could say another word, an incredible light blinded him. It was the contract. The binding magical agreement turned into a ball of flame that latched itself onto Naruto. Pain seared his whole body, and everything faded to black. The story had been running non-stop through Naruto's head as he drove through streets of Law. Well, he'd been trying to drive anyways, but the traffic had grinded his speed down to a crawl. If there was one thing he despised about living in the city, it was the traffic. As much of a pain as it was, his slow speed did give him time to notice something out of the corner of his eyes as he rode along. There was a girl in front of him, roughly his age, wearing black pants and matching tank top. Her long, straight hair was the same color, while her eyes were an emerald green. She was quite fetching, but that's not what piqued Naruto's interest. Two guys had been following her block after block after block, and it started to look a little odd to the young rider. The whole reason his interest had been piqued to begin with was that the men were staring at girl and not at her ass like some pervert would do. No, they were looking at her the way someone would look at a target. This girl was being tailed, and Naruto intended to find out why. He pulled up to the nearest parking spot he could find and hopped off his bike, walking at just the right speed so that he could get behind the two men in question without arousing suspicion. Once he was close enough to get a good look at them, his fears were quickly confirmed. Both men were wearing plain old button-up shirts, but Naruto could make out the body armor underneath them. Guns holsters hung from their hips as well, another fact Naruto wasn't a fan of. The cherry on top though was something the man on the left thought he had hidden up his sleeve. A military-grade taser. Naruto may not have known who these guys were, but he still knew enough not to trust them. He whispered to himself, these bastards are gonna try and kidnap her or some shit like that. DCH, not gonna happen. They're about to have themselves one hell of a bad day. The girl, for reasons the young rider didn't not yet understand, took a right down a dark alleyway. It must have been the perfect opportunity for her two stalkers because they followed right after her. Naruto in turn followed them, letting his chain fall out of his sleeve so that he'd be ready when the shit hit the fan. Everyone's footsteps echoed through the long corridor they found themselves in. Trash littered every corner around them, and the shadows that now covered their bodies made them feel almost as though they'd entered their own little world. In a move that stunned everyone, the girl came to sudden halt. Everyone behind her did the same, and the whole alley fell silent as girl turned around. She looked about 18 and pissed off at that. Her features were soft, but her voice was filled with venom. "You assholes really think I wasn't gonna notice you following me? If you're gonna try and catch me, you need to step up your game. Alright, X-23, why don't you do us a favor and come along nice and easy, okay?" the man with the taser requested. X-23 responded by extending two long, metallic blades out of her bunched up fists. "Go to hell." The girl lunged at the two men, apparently intent on sending them to the underworld herself. With all the speed he had within him, the man with the taser tried to pull out his weapon. It wasn't nearly enough though, as X-23 jammed her blades into his before he even came close to reaching his goal. X-23 then proceeded to rip the claws from his body, spraying crimson all around her when she did. While the man with the taser fell to the ground, dead, his partner in crime tried to reach for his gun. He failed miserably, with his opponent stabbing her blades into his eye sockets in a blur he had no chance of reacting to. The second man fell to the ground, equally as passed on, once X-23 pulled her claws out. Both men laid in a pool of blood and carnage that the girl seemed utterly indifferent to. She turned her attention towards Naruto and asked through her teeth, "What, you want some too?" No, not really," Naruto muttered, trying to understand what the hell had just happened in the previous 90 seconds. "I'm a ghost rider, and I was gonna see why those guys were stalking you. Guess I don't need to now." "No, you don't," X-23 growled, shoving her way past him. She stopped before she left the alleyway. Glancing back towards him, X-23 called, "So you're the new ghost rider, huh? I like your work. In case you were wondering, those assholes on the ground work for Hydra, Donald Pierce or maybe even both. Long story short, they're nobody to cry over anyways, see ya." X-23 exited the alleyway and took a right, leaving Naruto by his lonesome. The young rider sighed, well aware this wasn't over. Crazy girl with claws tears apart two shady guns for hire in an alleyway. Yep, I'm gonna have to look into that. Let's hope she hasn't run off too far yet. Thankfully the young woman hadn't gone too far from the alley. Naruto was able to catch up with her in the of people crowd and fall in step. After a few moments of silence, the rider asked, "So why would Hydra be after you?" "Probably because they created me in one of their labs to use as a weapon," X-23 said casually. Most people would have gasped, but Naruto wasn't the least bit fazed by this. Stranger things happen to him every day, so I'm guessing you had a moral breakthrough and escaped. When the woman nodded, Naruto asked, "How long ago?" "About a month." "Alright, seems like you've been handling yourself okay. So what are you going to do now?" With a shrug, X-23 admitted, "I hadn't thought that far. I guess I'll just keep moving and killing whoever comes after me." "There isn't someone who could help protect you? Or at the very least, keep you company?" Naruto asked. The young woman had already been looking into that. "There might be, but they're on the other side of the country, and there isn't any feasible way for me to get there." "You mean Wolverine and the X-Men, right?" Naruto asked, startling X-23. He grinned at her, "The claws kind of give you away. If you need me to, I could give you a ride." Skeptical, X-23 raised an eyebrow and asked, "And just why would you do that?" "Because I try to help people whenever possible," Naruto explained, "plus I have a few days off work and I need to get out of the city for a while before it drives me crazy." X-23 laughed a bit at her companion's outburst before stating, "What the hell, I'm in. I'll meet you here tomorrow and we'll head out." "You don't have a place to stay tonight, do you?" Naruto asked. "I'll find a place. I've been managing fine up until now." When the girl confirmed his suspicion, Naruto sighed before saying, "Okay, two things. First, you're staying at my place tonight. I've got something scheduled so I'll be out anyway. And two, I'm not going on a road trip calling you X-23, that's a serial number not a name." After a few moments of silence, the young woman spoke up, "Call me Laura." Hearing the name, Naruto smiled as he said, "Nice to meet you, Laura." In response, the teen smirked as she stated, "Likewise." She-Hulk tapped her foot, a skeptical eye watching Naruto. "So this girl, Laura, does she have a place to stay until you leave tomorrow?" "Yeah, I've got her stashed back at my apartment," Naruto said, a little yawn escaping his S. "I ended telling her she can sleep in my bed. Gonna suck being stuck out on the couch." "You're not sleeping with her then?" She-Hulk asked, to which Naruto shook his head, "And how long will you be gone for?" There was no way for Naruto to know that for sure. Hell, could be a week, could be 2 weeks, could be a month, I don't know. "Why do you ask?" She-Hulk got a mischievous look on her face. She swayed her hips as she walked over to Naruto, pushing him up against the wall. The boy opened his mouth to talk, but She-Hulk silenced him with a rough French dot when they broke. She whispered into his ear, "You won't be sleeping on any couch tonight. If you're going to be gone for that long, then I'm gonna need one for the road. For the rest of the night, you're mine, Blondie." "Whatever you say," Naruto replied, recalling how wonderful the other nights she'd gotten like this had been. "Did I get lucky and catch you in some wild lingerie?" In a perfect answer, She-Hulk started to unbutton and rip it off, along with her skirt. What she revealed was a lace purple and black bra that barely contained her massive bust, along with matching garter belt connect to the fishnet she'd worn. This look was enough to have Naruto grabbing her by the ass and pulling her into another, She-Hulk undoing his pants as he did. Once his pants were off and boxers were down, She-Hulk broke Andy and sank down to her knees to find he was already rock hard. It's a good thing you'll be driving most of tomorrow, because by the time I'm done with you, you'll hardly even be able to walk. Now, let's get this party started. As Naruto began to enjoy his night, he couldn't help but question if his life would have been this good, relatively speaking, at least, had he not died and stayed in his own world. It was the middle of a cloudy night in the village hidden in the leaves. Hardly anyone was up, and those that were didn't notice as a figure hopped from rooftop to roof to carrying a basket with them. The figure didn't stop until they reached the village cemetery. Slowly, the figure walked past the rows of grave markers until they reached one that read Naruto Uzumaki. Bending down, the figure traced the name with her delicate, skilled fingers before saying, "Hello, Naruto-kun. I brought you some ramen." As she spoke, the clouds parted to allow the moonlight to reveal Hinata Hyuga. In the years since her crush's death she'd grown a few feet and had allowed her indigo hair to grow out. While she'd also lost her stutter, a few things hadn't changed. She still her pupil-less eyes and she still dressed in bulky jackets, although the newest one was a thinner purple and gray instead of the previous white. As she was about to pull the food out of her basket, Hinata heard someone walking behind her. Turning around, she was greeted to the side of her friend, Kiba and Yuzuka. "Hey Hinata-chan. I thought I might find you here." Kiba began, "I'm sorry to do this right now, but we need to talk about the whole marriage thing." "We will, Kiba-chan. Just give me a couple of minutes with Naruto-kun." Kiba nodded and took a step back. Not many other people referred to the shinobi with the chan suffix. Hinata herself only ever did it in private and had to fight hard to not let it s out when they were in public. The reason for this was quite simple, and it was the same reason she and Kiba were to be married in the coming months. But that was a story for another time. There was something oddly calming about a cemetery for Hinata. Most people seemed afraid of them, but the Hyuga heiress had never been able to understand why. Sure, it was a home for the dead and all supposedly spooky stuff, but why would something like that be scary? A cemetery was a place of eternal rest, where people could sleep forever. People became ash and returned from wherever they'd come from. That was a beautiful thought in Hinata's mind. She really did look peaceful there, sharing a bowl of ramen with her lost friend. It hurt Kiba to have break it up, but it's what had to be done. "Hinata-chan, are you almost ready? I'm sorry about rushing you, but like I said, there's something we need to talk about tonight." "Why not talk about them here? If only it were that simple. We don't know who could be watching, Hinata-chan. I shouldn't have to tell you that. It's safer back at the house. I hate doing this to you." Hinata knew her friend was right, no matter how badly she wanted to pretend otherwise. "It's fine, Kiba-chan. I'll be ready to go in just a moment." "Alright," Kiba said skeptically. There was something in Hinata's tone that warranted a little more concern. "Hey, are you okay? You don't seem like yourself." "I'm fine." Her tone suggested otherwise, and Kiba knew it. "No, you're not. Something's wrong, and you're gonna tell me what when we get home." "Kiba-chan." "Don't Kiba-chan me," Kiba said with a soft tone. "You know I can tell when something's wrong, Hinata-chan, and when I find out what it is, I'm gonna do everything I can to fix it. Okay?" Hinata could hear the concern in Kiba's voice. It really was sweet how much her husband worried about her. "Okay, Kiba-chan. Let's go home." Mephisto carefully eyed the crowbar sitting on the table in front of him. It was the wreckers of course, and that poor soul now sat alone with a deadly demon in what looked like some kind of interrogations room. Unlike most interrogation rooms he'd been in, the entire place was made with bricks of bones, separated by lines of burning brimstone. The heat had made the wrecker sweat out more water than he ever thought was in his body, but that wasn't what had him concerned at the moment. That honor belonged to Mephisto's soul-piercing eyes, which had been glancing between the wrecker and his crowbar. "This is a nice tool you got here. Real strong, isn't it? Where'd you get something like this, wrecker?" That was the exact question the wrecker had been dreading. "It was a gift." "A gift, Mephisto asked. He moved his hand so that it was hovering directly above the crowbar. It began to shake before levitating a few inches off from the table. A small ring of fire appeared and began to rotate around the center of it. The single ring split into two, both heading across the crowbar in opposite directions. Like a layer of paint, the gray color of crowbar was stripped away as the rings made their journey. By the time they were finished, the crowbar's metallic facade was over, and it was revealed that the weapon was actually made from a strange kind of purple stone, with a fluorescent glow to it. Wrecker gulped when saw the way Mephisto smiled at him. "This is one hell of a gift you've got here." "Who gave it to you?" The wrecker began shaking in his seat. I can't tell you." That answer was enough to turn Mephisto's smile into a frown. His tone lacked any real emotion, and yet his quiet intensity was enough to make any being shiver. You shouldn't lie to me, Wrecker. We both know you can tell me anything you want. You're just afraid of outing whoever your new boss is. Thing is, your boss ain't here right now. You know who is? One of the most sadistic men in any known dimension. With that in mind, here's what you're going to do. You're going to tell me who gave you that crowbar. You're going to tell me exactly why they gave it to you, and then you're going to thank me for not punishing you for that little fib you just told me. Do I need to repeat myself, Wrecker? And no sir, not at all, the Wrecker stammered. One look in this thing's eyes gave the Wrecker a pretty good idea of what he was capable of. If that burning inferno he saw Pillar succumb to was just the act of some indifferent lackey, the Wrecker didn't want to see what the head honcho could do if he was pissed off. I got it from Baron Mordo. He said it's made out of some kinda stone from another dimension. It was called something weird, like hush shit, what was it? The dark dimension, Mephisto growled, shaking his head. I knew I'd seen this material before. So, the old sorcerer's working for Dormammu again. Isn't that wonderful? The Wrecker was lost. Sorcerer? Dormammu? I ain't following you, man. Of course the fool couldn't follow what Mephisto was saying. The Wrecker knew nothing of Baron Mordo's past with the sorcerers of the Ancient One, or of Dormammu, the ruler of the Dark Dimension. Neither of those things mattered though. What Mephisto needed was to understand what role the Wrecker played in any of this. Don't worry about it. What did Mordo want in exchange for the crowbar? Far as I could tell, he wanted to off some people with it, the Wrecker answered with a shrug. He told me he'd give me a crowbar that could bust through anything, including bank vaults and Iron Man's suit, and in exchange, he needed me to beat somebody to death with it whenever I robbed a joint. The Ghost Rider stopped me before I could do it though, so I never got to see what would happen if I went through with it. Mephisto was partially responsible for that. He'd felt some kind of power was at play in his homeworld a while ago, multiple sources of it in fact. The closest one to his rider had been in Law, which was why that was one he sent Naruto to fetch, but there was spikes of this strange energy all across the world, meaning the Wrecker probably wasn't alone in his endeavor. Whether or not the idiot knew it, he had partners. It made sense when Mephisto thought about it. Mordo was smart, he'd know better than to concentrate whatever he was doing in one location. Something like that would rouse too much suspicion. Spreading it out made the whole affair much less notable, especially if murder was involved. There was only one possibility that may explain to Mephisto why Mordo would work with fools like the Wrecker in order to people killed with such a particular kind of weapon. Dormammu needed souls, and Mephisto knew how Mordo was providing them. They're using weapons forged in the Dark Dimension to siphon souls back into it. Dormammu's trying to make himself stronger, probably so him and his lackeys can make a run at the Sanctums again, and he wouldn't bother with something like that unless he was confident something had changed that turned the tables in his favor. By this point, the Wrecker was utterly lost. Hold on, who's Dormammu? And why's Mordo working for him? And what are Sanctums? And… That's enough, Mephisto cut him off. To put it simply, Dormammu is an interdimensional being who controls the realm known as the Dark Dimension. He's nearly unstoppable there, not that he couldn't already do some damage in our realm, not to mention the fact that time is meaningless inside of it. For millennia, he's been spreading his influence to absorb more and more dimensions into his domain. The Sanctums are the only thing stopping him from doing the same to ours, and frankly, the fact they're maintained by Strange and his sorcerer friends is the only reason I put up with the sorcerers to begin with. As for Mordo, well, he betrayed the sorcerers a long time ago. He could be after revenge or something more. Don't know, don't care if I'm being frank about it. The Wrecker only blinked in response. You lost me again. I don't particularly care. That little tidbit was more for me to straighten out my thought anyways. It's time for you to go home, Wrecker. So you're not gonna kill me? A sinister smile danced across Mephisto's when he answered, no, I'm just going to wipe your memory of ever meeting me. You could be useful down the road, so killing you would be an awful waste. I'll just give the worst headache known to man instead. The Wrecker tried to protest. Wait, you're gonna wipe my… Bye-bye, Wrecker, Mephisto cut him off, making the villain vanish in flash of flame and puff of smoke. But that fool gone, Mephisto could refocus his thoughts on what he needed to do next. There was no way he could let Dormammu waltz into his home dimension and just tear the place apart like that. Not a snowball's chance in hell. Mephisto needed manpower to make sure that wouldn't happen, but Naruto alone might not be enough. More riders would be ideal, but where was Mephisto going to find them? Someone already trained in combat would be ideal, since that would mean all they would need to be taught were the Ghost Rider parts of their powers. It might be even better if Naruto himself had a vested interest in training this person, consider that would almost certainly making the training period go by faster. Of course, both those things needed to come in the package of someone willing to sign a contract with Mephisto. A person like that was going to be hard to find though. I don't think there's anyone in the entire world who fits that bill, Mephisto said to himself. He almost felt it defeated until a wicked idea popped into his head, well, maybe no one in this world anyways. Hinata was beginning to feel helpless in her life. There wasn't anything particularly bad in it when sat down and thought about things. In fact, things had been going quite well all things considered. She had recently made Jonin, her typically reserved father seemed confident in handing the clan over to her when she came of age, and it looked as if she might actually stand a chance at abolishing the caged bird seal. Best of all though, she'd found a way to get through the bullshit that was a political clan marriage that didn't result in her marrying an asshole. All of that didn't change one simple fact thought. There was no fire in Hinata's life. Honestly, Hinata, I don't what to tell you. That's never really been a problem for me. Working for the clan's always been enough for me. Well, that and keeping an eye out for my best friends, anyways. The Hyuga era smiled a bit at the last part of Kiba's sentence. Akamaru gave a small bark of approval as well. Hinata was currently sitting on the bathroom floor, leaning up against the tub Kiba was bathing in. Kiba had always been good to Hinata from the first moment they'd met, and their friendship had lasted well beyond that. Of course, they may have had something to do with the fact Hinata was one of the few who knew Kiba's dark secret. In all fairness, Kiba-chan, you've also got something else to distract from any of the thing I worry about. Hiding your true self from everyone takes up a lot of your time. Kiba groaned at the memories of everything she'd had to do today alone to hide the truth from citizens of the Hidden Leaf. Yes, she. The young boy who'd quite possibly been the most brash, crude member of the Rookie Nine was in fact a woman. This was something she'd been hiding essentially from the moment she was born, and it had been hidden for one simple reason. The sake of her clan. In a nutshell, the clan had gone through a massive overhaul after the death of Kiba's father, who had been the clan head at the time, during the Kyuubi's escape. Tsume had the right to take over the clan in her husband's stead, but the majority of the council had been heavily traditional and weren't too keen on the idea of a woman taking over. From the second Tsume took over, they were trying to find a way to force her out and have the next male in line become the clan head. It was up to Tsume to find a way to stop them from giving away her children's birthright. Being several months pregnant, she was able to convince just enough council members to vote to hold off appointing a new clan head until her child was born and the gender was revealed. Most of the clan had held Kiba's father in high regard and wished to see his bloodline remain at the head of the clan. Things got rather complicated when Kiba was born a girl, but Tsume had a backup plan for that as well. Until the older, more traditional members of the council passed on and were replaced with enough people who realized a woman could lead a clan just as well as a man, Kiba would be presented to the world as a male. That had come with its own set of challenges, most of which weren't too bad when she was younger, as his feminine features could be hidden with baggy clothes that grew increasingly difficult to manage as the years went on. Puberty was a tough time in particular, as her curves became too prominent to hidden by a simple sweatshirt. The girl had to live in an almost constant henge, and even under that was an elaborate setup of clothing, designed to make her look just boyish enough for her to run somewhere safe, without anyone noticing in case something were to happen. It had been trial to say the least, and there had been more than one close call that nearly resulted in the whole thing crumbling down, but Kiba had managed to keep the act up long enough, now that only one council member needed to be replaced, before the whole charade could be dropped. For Kiba, that was an event that couldn't arrive too soon. Hinata-chan, I love you, but please don't remind me about all that bullshit right now. This is the one place in the Hidden Leaf where I can relax and be myself. All I want to focus on while I'm here is warm water and helping you, okay? Alright, if that's what you want, Hinata replied, honestly though, I'm not sure if there's anything you can do. It's not the kind of problem you can just get over in one night. Kiba nodded as he rubbed a washcloth across her face. She was a real knockout without her henge on, looking and sounding an awful lot like her mother. The warm water helped her think, bringing her back to the time when Hinata's worldview had slowly began to change. Hinata, I'm gonna ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Is this about Naruto? Yes and no, Hinata admitted, searching for the proper words to explain herself. It's not necessarily about Naruto-kun himself, not exactly anyways. I know I loved him, at least as much as some my age was capable of anyways, but that alone isn't enough to make me feel like this. It's just well, Naruto-kun kind of represented something for me. I'd watch him train all the time, and day after day, knockdown after knockdown, he'd always get up and try again. The kind of determination he had inspired me, I guess, that and the fact that you couldn't get him to back down no matter what the circumstances. If Naruto-kun thought something wasn't right, he was going to stand up and say it, no matter what the consequences for him were. That kind of thing was actually how we first met. He was protecting me from a group of bullies, even though he had to know he never stood a chance against them. It didn't matter to Naruto-kun, what mattered was that he saw someone who needed help. What do you do with something like that? Uzumaki was his own beast alright. I always thought he was kinda cute, but I never did anything cause you liked him way more than I did, Kiba said with a nod. Did I ever tell you how hung he was? Seriously, when I had to use the boys' locker room with him back in the day. Hinata's entire face went crimson. Kiba-chan. Not the time. He's sorry. In her heart, Hinata knew Kiba was only trying to lighten the mood with a little humor. She couldn't get too mad at her, it's fine. The point I'm trying to make is, if someone with the determination and heart of Naruto-kun couldn't make a difference, what chance does someone like me have, or anyone have for that matter? Kiba hated seeing her friend in a state like this. Hinata-chan, don't be so hard on yourself. You've already made plenty of difference, especially in my life. I don't know what I would have done without you. Everything I've been through, from my first crush to the council pressuring me into finding a wife, you've been there. Not to mention the fact that you're a hell of a shinobi in your own right and you're killing it with all your clan work. You're incredible, Hinata-chan, even if you don't know it. Thank you, Kiba-chan, but I can't take credit for all of that. The political marriage was for both us. I didn't want to marry some from a high family any more than you did. Your situation was a little more volatile than mine. I guess I am proud of what I've done for my clan and how far I've come as a shinobi though. You should be, Kiba told her friend as she reached for the bath stopper on the other side of the tub. I can't just sit around and watch when you're in a mood like this. We're going downstairs and I'm gonna make you some cinnamon buns. Hinata started shaking her head when she heard the bathwater washing down the drain. You don't have to do that, Kiba-chan. It was too later. Kiba was already drying herself off and stepping out of the tub. You're right, I don't have to, but I want to. Doing things that makes you happy makes me happy. So, we're going to go downstairs, I'm going to make you sweets, and we're gonna spend the rest of the night telling funny stories to try and cheer you up. Got it? Yeah, I got it, Hinata giggled. She was grateful to have a friend like Kiba around. There weren't many people she could rely on as heavily as she did her Inuzuka husband. It may have been a fake marriage, but there was real love within it, an odd love that had grown from their friendship. Neither woman was ready to commit fully to the act, but they couldn't deny they had an understanding of each other that went beyond friendship. Although it wasn't without its trials. If you want some funny stories, how about our wedding day? Never thought in a million years that my first would with you. Kiba snorted with laughter. Oh man, that was so weird. Not bad I guess, but I couldn't get out of my head that it was you I was ing. Just kinda awkward, you know. Yeah, I do, Hinata agreed. She let Kiba exit the bathroom so she could head to her bedroom and get some clothes on. After a moment of quiet contemplation, Hinata called to friend, Kiba-chan, if we're gonna be talking about things tonight, one of those things should probably be what we're gonna do about the deadline. I said funny stories, Hinata-chan, Kiba called back, that definitely doesn't count. Hinata wasn't laughing about it either, but that was beside the point, we can't keep putting it off. We're supposed to conceive a child within the next year, or we breach both clans' marriage contracts. If we don't think up something soon. Before Hinata could finish, Kiba popped out in front of her shorts and a baggy t-shirt and threw a hand over the girl's mouth. We'll get done eventually. There's a good chance we'll have to bring somebody else into the fold to do it, but we'll take care of this. Not tonight though. Tonight, we eat, drink, and laugh. Okay. Kiba pulled her hand down, allowing Hinata to ask, when did we add drinking to the list? Just now. You got a problem with that? Not at all. Just don't get too handsy when you drink too much tonight. There were just too many good responses for Kiba to pass up. She started to tease Hinata as they, accompanied by Akamaru, made their way downstairs. Aw, that's no fun. Aren't you the one who's been saying you've got some urges you want to work out? Maybe I could help. After all, I want to please my wife. Hinata started blushing. Kiba-chan. And it's not fair to taunt me with that body of yours. Seriously, you're like a goddess. The more Kiba spoke, the redder Hinata got. Please, you're embarrassing me. Aw, I didn't mean to do that. What do you say we go upstairs and I'll apologize? We just can't be too loud. Akamaru might think I'm in danger if I start screaming too much. That remark, along with fact that Akurama barked in confirmation, was enough to earn a laugh from Hinata. This was going to be interesting night. More interesting than she realized in fact. The night had been going well so far. Hinata and her husband. Kiba's cinnamon buns had been fantastic, they'd had some good sake, even sharing just a touch of it with Akamaru, and stories flowed like water. Nice, relaxing, and nobody was too drunk yet. For Hinata, this was just about a perfect night and she was more than happy to end it there. Everyone was sitting at a circular kitchen table, the dark oak matching the natural decor that Tsume loved, when Hinata stood up from her chair and said, okay Kiba-chan, this has been fun and all, but I think we'd better call it a night. We've both got things to do tomorrow, don't we? Aw, come on Hinata-chan, Kiba pouted, not ready to end their story session. I didn't even get to tell you about the merchant I was hired to protect the other day. He looked so good, I almost thought about dropping my henge and trying to convince him I was a civilian girl, so I could just jump his bones real quick. We really need to do something about your repressed urges. Kiba-chan, what happened to that toy I bought you last week? Hinata asked with a blush. Normally a Hyuga would be against visiting such establishments, but with her friend's urges and the difficulty in a man purchasing such items without raising suspicions, sacrifices must be made. I don't know, Kiba answered honestly, maybe Akamaru buried it in the yard again. I swear sometimes it seems he's the one trying to get us in bed together the hardest. Akamaru barked and wagged his tail. There was a big soft spot in the pup for Hinata, one that had been there since the day he met the Hyuga heiress. She was one of the few people outside the Inyazuka clan who fully understood how smart Akamaru was and treated him as more than a giant plushie. Sure, at the end of the day Akamaru had many of the same quirks and ways of showing his emotions that a regular dog did, but he was more than just a pet. Hinata appreciated that, and in return, he appreciated Hinata. However, the exceptional pup and all of his idiosyncrasies weren't what need to be focused on at the moment. That would be getting to bed, which Hinata fully intended to do. Well, Kiba-chan, staying up longer won't solve any of our problems, so I'm gonna go get some sleep. You're welcome to do the same if you'd like. You really aren't any fun anymore, Hinata-chan, Kiba grumbled, her eyes following the girl as she pushed herself away from the table and made her way out of the room. Hinata took a left out of the room and exited Kiba's view, only to return within it a few seconds later when she stepped to where she'd first turned. There was a small, circular mirror just as standing high on the wall where she'd stopped, and the Hyuga heiress was staring into it intently. Too intently for Kiba's liking to be exact. You see something in there you don't like? Do you have some shit on your face or? Kiba-chan, come here. What for? Hinata didn't have time to explain. Now, Kiba. Alright, hold your horses, Kiba grumbled, jumping up from the table and walking over to the same mirror Hinata stood at. I'm sure whatever it is, it can't be that bad. Whatever train of thought Kiba had before she looked into the mirror was gone now. Her thoughts were occupied completely by what she saw in what should have been the reflection of she and Hinata. Akamaru could sense some kind of tension in the room, so he hurried over to the two girls. Using his back legs as support, the dog went upright, using his front legs to support himself on the wall, and looked into the mirror that had his friend so transfixed. He began to growl and bark the moment he saw what Hinata and Kiba already had. There was a man in the mirror, one none of them recognized. He was grinning like a Cheshire cat, and everyone in the room could have sworn he was looking right at them. They'd find out exactly who he was soon enough, though Naruto could have told them who it was if he were there. Naruto would have begged them to run too, but it was too late for that. The man in the mirror closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and opened them again, releasing a blinding light that made everything vanish in a sea of white. When the group could see again, they were no longer in their home. Instead they stood in a place that could only be described as empty. There wasn't anything inside around them, with the exception of a gray floor their feet rested on. Kiba was the first to speak after taking a brief glance in front of her. Someone mind telling me where in the we are right now? I believe I can handle that, a smooth voice behind them said, making the girls and the dog spin around to find the man from the mirror standing before them. Hello, ladies. My name is Mephisto. Sorry about the abrupt way I called you here, but time is of the essence. Before Mephisto got out another word, Akamaru began to growl and bark at him. Kiba took notice and narrowed her eyes. Akamaru doesn't trust you, that mean I don't trust you either, face. You're just as brash as I thought you'd be, Mephisto muttered before glancing over at Akamaru, and I'll give the dog this, he's a good judge of character. I'm here to make Hinata an offer. It's an offer that's going to do wonderful things for me, I'll admit that much, but you'll be gaining an awful lot yourselves too, I assure you. Hinata took a couple of steps back, not liking the feeling of even being in the same proximity as this man. Hold on. We still don't even know who you are. All we've got is your name. We're gonna need a little more than that. These girls were really going to drag out this whole process. Then again, that was probably for the best. It meant they were smart enough for them to be worth Mephisto's, while I, Miss Hyuga, am a being born in the fires of the My Dimension's underworld. Over the centuries, my power has grown, making me strong enough to have influence in worlds outside of my own. Needless to say, there's plenty I can do for you if you're willing to work with me. What exactly do you mean your dimension? Mephisto chuckled at Hinata's ignorance. Oh, it's always fun dealing with dimensions so much less advanced than my own. You see, my dear, sweet child, there are worlds well beyond your own, more than you could ever imagine. Some differ from your own only slightly, others have changes that'd make your head spin. One of those dimensions is the one I came from, and it's also the one where your beloved Naruto still resides. Now he had Hinata's attention. What are you talking about? Naruto's dead. In your world maybe, but I snatched up his soul and gave him a new life in mine. However, he's going to be in grave danger soon, facing something I don't know if he can handle on his own. I need someone to help him, and that's where you come in. Kiba didn't like what she was hearing, arguing with me right now. Do you really expect us to believe all that? What proof do you have? Another good question, but it was also one that got on Mephisto's nerves. He'd had a long day already, and the idea of explaining himself to these green as grass fools wasn't all that appealing. There was a way to expedite the whole process though, and Mephisto intended on using it. Let me put your minds at ease, girls. Look into my eyes for a moment. Oh, this just keeps getting better, Kiba groaned, but she had to admit, she found herself compelled to do as the man had asked. Not to mention the fact that if he planned on hurting them, he probably would have done it already. Both she and Hinata looked into the stranger's eyes and found themselves experience something beyond words. The world around the girls flashed into a sea of white light once again, but this time it felt as though the entire process was in fast forward. They would see a new world for a split second, less than a second in fact, and then bam, they'd be in another. This happened hundreds of times, giving Hinata and Kiba glimpses of worlds different from their own. It was almost enough to make them go insane, or at least it would have been if Mephisto wasn't controlling the process so carefully. Whatever this was, it wasn't an illusion. Both girls felt the locations they were in, felt it right down to their bones. This made it all the more mind-boggling when, for the tiniest of moments, they got a peek at someone who was supposed to be long-dead Naruto Uzumaki, riding down a road on a device they'd never seen before. A motorcycle of course, but they didn't know that. Mephisto pulled them out at the moment, leaving Hinata and Kiba's head spinning. So, ladies, do you believe me now? Okay, that was terrifying, Kiba replied, rubbing her temples with her hands, just terrifying enough to make me think you might actually be able to do what you say you can. That doesn't mean we can trust you though, especially when we don't even know what Kendo offer you're making Hinata. But the snap of his fingers, Mephisto summoned a line of flame about 8 inches long in front of him. Like paper from a printing press, a contract flowed from the line, one similar to the version Naruto had signed before. This contract is all the trust you're ever going to need. It states each of our duties to one another quite clearly, and it ensures you'll be able to see Naruto once again, and possibly even save his life in the process. Oh, and there's a few other little goodies in there as well. For example, Kiba, I'm sure you're tired of this dress-up game you have to play every day for the sake of your clan. I may not be able to do much in your world, what with all restrictions that come with using my powers in other dimensions, but even I can give a heart attack to the last old geezer that's preventing the council from instating a female clan head permanently. Kiba was both thrilled and terrified. On one hand, this guy could help her clan out in a big way. On the other, he was diabolical enough to know Hinata had a hard time turning down something that could help a friend, a nice offer, but I don't want Hinata-chan doing this for my sake. Who said it would just be for you? Mephisto asked with a wicked grin. I can do things for her other loved ones as well. Is she worried her poor, stuck-up cousin Niji might die alone? I can influence him to ask out that pretty little teammate of his he's been eyeing so fondly. Tenten, was it? And as for her baby sister, Hanabi, I can influence your father into making her the clan heiress once you leave, and the contract ensures that I have to come back and influence the council into removing the caged bird seal, once she's in control. Think about that, Hinata. Think about all the good you can do with just a stroke of a pen. Granted, you'll have to work for me, but I assure you, even that work will bring joy to a lot of people. There was a look in Hinata's eyes that Kiba didn't like. Honestly, the guy's offer sounded great, which is exactly what made Kiba so suspicious of it. Work for you? What, are you planning on whoring her out or something? Mephisto rolled his eyes and shook his head. Of course not. She'll be bringing me the souls of some nasty individuals, that's all. If she wants to indulge the sins of the flesh, she can do it on her own time. I want to do it, Hinata said all of a sudden. I want to sign the contract. But a girl, Mephisto bellowed. I knew you wouldn't be selfish enough to turn it down. Just give me your hand, and I'll get the process moving. This was bad, really bad. All Hinata think about was all the good she was going to do for the people she loved. This bastard was almost shaming her into doing this. Kiba tried to reach out before Hinata's hand too could reach Mephisto, and Akamaru tried to snap at the man too, but it was useless. Mephisto raised up his hand, 5 sharpened fingernails on all 5 digits of it, and slashed them away, cutting both Kiba's hand and Akamaru's snout. The sharpened fingernails dripped blood, some of which unintentionally hit the contract Hinata was ready to sign. Kiba was nearly out of time. Hinata-chan, hold on. You're not thinking straight. Everything this guy says sounds nice, but he's not giving you all the facts. I know you're doing this to help everyone else, but you've got to worry about yourself too. Hinata couldn't hear Kiba. Her friend's words were nothing but white noise. All the Hyuga heiress could think about was those she loved getting everything they had ever desired. Her hand reached Mephisto and he took, slicing Hinata's thumb with his fingernail. Once blood began to ooze from it, he laid her hand down to the contract and let her do the rest. Hinata signed her name in blood, hitting the drops of Kiba and Akamaru's blood along the way, and sealed her fate. Mephisto couldn't have been happier. Wonderful, I'll see you on the other side. Hinata-chan, Kiba cried out, but it was too late. The contract transformed into a bowl of purple flame that hung in the air before shooting towards Hinata. A white light began to overtake them, and everything soon started to vanish. No. Hinata-chan. When Hinata regained her senses and the white faded away to reveal the new world, she found herself in a place that almost felt familiar. It was an overgrown forest, filled to the brim with pine trees that stretched far into the sky. The whole place smelled of fresh air and maple sap. This was the kind of place where Hinata could enjoy a peaceful night by herself, that is, if she had been by herself. Kiba-chan. What the hell are you doing here? And Akamaru too. What the hell's going on? Kiba and Akamaru were both laying on a pile of dead pine needles, groaning to themselves. They pushed themselves up off the rich dirt, and Kiba said, "Aw man, my head's killing me. What the just happened? Hinata, what are we doing here? That would be partially my fault. Partially yours too, but I'll admit it's partially mine." The voice of Mephisto rang in everyone's head. It terrified the hell out of them at first, but after everything they seen today, adjusting to a simple voice in their head was rather easy. Your blood was still on the contract when Hinata signed it. Well, she's the only one who gave her signature, and is thus the only one bound to me. The contract was meant to pull the essence of anyone who touched it into this dimension. A minor error. Nothing much I could do about it now though. Let it roll off your back and focus on what's coming towards you next. What's coming at us next? Hinata echoed, what's that supposed to mean? A massive roar would be her answer. It felt entire forest began to shake around them as the footsteps of a massive beast began to grow closer towards them. Poor Akamaru didn't know whether to growl or whimper. The sound of trees being knocked over could be heard in the distance until the beast who'd be approaching them finally came into view. Kiba went pale the second she saw it. Oh, this is not gonna end well. Standing before them was a massive fur-covered humanoid beast with fangs and razor-sharp claws. It was nearly 8 feet tall and covered head to toe in muscles. There was a rage in the creature's crimson eyes that would make most men either. Mephisto sounded off again in the girls' minds. That big pissed-off son of a bitch would be Wendigo. He's your first target, Hinata. Do me a favor and try and bring him down without killing him. No biggie if you can't though. The important thing is have some fun with your new powers. Are you kidding me? Hinata asked before Wendigo began charging at them. Damn it, what new powers are you talking about? Kiba did what any good Inyazuka would do when their friend was in danger. Rushed in to defend her. She leapt into the air and tried to get her tunneling fang going, intent on tearing this thing apart. Alright, fur face, let's see how you handle this. Another roar left Wendigo's mouth. Kiba came hurriedly towards him, trying to get her body spinning fast enough to create the flying drill her family was famous for. She found herself unable to muster up the usual power for some reason she did not yet understand, and the attack was barely at half power. Wendigo smacked her away the second she got close, sending Kiba hurtling into a nearby tree. Hinata watched as her friend smacked her back onto the unforgiving bark and then landed on the ground below, knocking the breath out of the Inyazuka. The Hyuga heiress had no intention of just letting the beast do something like that to Kiba, so she got into her fight stance. Leave her alone, you monster. Brah, Wendigo cried before charging towards Hinata. The girl waited for him to get close, letting the monster take a swipe at her before she did anything. Hinata ducked under the attack and went right for his pressure points with her gentle fist style. It was enough to send the beast reeling back, if only for a second. In no time at all, Wendigo shook off the attack and snatched Hinata by the throat before she could react. Hot breath poured onto Hinata's face as the monster roared, Gaia. Wendigo slammed Hinata onto the ground, sending pain coursing through the girl's body. She could have sworn she heard some bones break when she hit. I can't. Don't move, Hinata-chan, Kiba begged, trying to get to her feet. Wendigo heard this and turned towards her. I can handle this. The attacks had clearly hit the Inyazuka woman hard. She could barely stand, and Akamaru could see it. A desire to protect his master took over the pup, and he leapt in front of Kiba and began barking, trying to scare away Wendigo. It didn't work. Wendigo kept on walking towards them, murder in his eyes. Kiba tried to make herself a man-beast clone, but she couldn't do it. No chakra would come to her. Without her powers, she was at the mercy of the monster in front of her. It can't end like this, Hinata thought to herself. I can't have come to this new just to die in it. I won't. I refuse to. This thing isn't over. With a newfound strength, Hinata pushed herself up off the ground and grabbed the nearest rock she could find. She held it tightly in her fist and called to the Wendigo, hey, you. Big, hairy, and ugly. I'm not done with you yet. Wendigo turned towards her, ready to roar, but Hinata cocked her arm back and threw her rock before he could begin. The moment after that rock left Hinata's hand, something incredible happened. A purple flame began to engulf the pebble, a flame that grew and grew. It flew through the air until it was a full-blown fireball that struck Wendigo dead on, scorching his furry gah. "Do you want to fight, Wendigo?" Hinata asked in a voice filled with confidence. A layer of the same purple flame starting to coat her body, "Then you can get it from me." In a blaze of glory, Hinata's form changed completely. Her clothes had transformed into spiked high-heeled knee-high boots, leather pants, a black bikini top, a spiked collar, and a black bandana that covered her mouth and nose. Unlike most riders though, her form didn't turn completely skeletal. No, instead it glowed a purplish hue, with flaming hair to match. The chain fell from her arm, one covered in her purple flame. Hinata swung it with all of her strength and wrapped the chain around Wendigo's neck. She pulled it tight, cutting off the beast's air supply. This fight had taken a rather swift turn in Hinata's favor. "How do you like that, asshole? I think it's time we end this thing, eh?" Biba couldn't have agreed more, and she refused not to be a part of it. She turned towards Akamaru, who'd been watching the entire thing with her, and gave her partner a nod. The dog knew what it meant. As a team, the two of them charged towards Wendigo, whose back was facing towards them, and lowered their shoulders. They rammed themselves into the beast, sending it flying towards Hinata, who held her ground right up until it was about to hit her. Once it was right where she wanted it, Hinata kicked Wendigo in the stomach and sent him straight up into the air, with the chain still wrapped around his neck. Soon, the chain ran out of slack, and that was when the end would come for Wendigo. "Brah," was the beast's final cry before the chain ran out. Hinata held on tight as her weapon reached its maximum tension, and Wendigo's neck hit the back of the chain. Like a hot knife through butter, the scorched metal tore through the monster's fur and flesh, and it didn't stop until Wendigo's head flew clean off from his body. Both the head and body fell to the ground not long after. "And that's how you kill a Wendigo," Hinata said with a smile. It was then that she realized Kiba was staring at her, for rather obvious reasons. She looked down at her new form and said with a sigh, "Well, this is turning out to be an interesting turn of events, huh?" Kiba rolled her eyes. "Yeah, you can say that again. Gotta say thought, I am digging your new look. I mean, you were hot before, but now you're literally on fire." "That's real cute, Kiba-chan," Hinata replied. Admittedly, she did feel like a badass right now. Yep, like a skilled, tough as nails badass. Her new power's really something now. If only she had some idea of what to make of all this. This whole thing's has been crazy. Good thing I know the guy who can give us some answers. That was when they heard a familiarly demented voice behind them. "That you do, Ms. Hyuga." "Aw man, that ride was brutal," Naruto groaned as he stepped into his hotel room. It had been a long day of almost constant riding, with only the occasional food or bathroom break to mix up the monotony. Laura hadn't liked it any more than Naruto did. That much was obvious from the way she'd vanished into her room the second her riding partner got their card keys. The hotel they were staying at was nothing too fancy, but it wasn't a roach's nest either. Decent beds, fresh sheets, clean bathrooms, and plenty of place to gather supplies nearby. That was all they really needed. "Yep, I can work with this alright. It ain't even close to the worst place I've ever had to stay in." Naruto laid on his crimson-colored bed for a while before deciding he should probably check on Laura and make sure she didn't need anything for the night. He jumped up, walked to his door, and opened it, letting the night air of Santa Fe, New Mexico hit his face. Once he double-checked to make sure he had his key card in his pocket, he headed over to the room next to his and knocked on the door. There was no answer. "Laura, you in there? I just wanted to check on you one last time for the night. Everything good?" Instead of a proper, vocalized response, what Naruto heard from the other side of the door was a level of snoring that you'd expect to hear coming out of a small bear. There was no doubt this was Laura's room though, which could only mean one thing. He thought to himself, "Damn, she's already out. Guess it was a pretty long day. As long as she's out, guess I might as well check out the town and see if I can't take care of that. Not sure when the next chance I'll get it, and the feeling's already coming back. I swear Mephisto's been making it worse lately. Can he do that, actually? Whatever. Let's go out and see what this town's got to offer." Naruto had always hated college parties. The only reason he ever went to them was out of necessity. Constant flashing lights and the smell of 10 different people's vape pens filling the air was far from his definition of fun. Still, that was where he had the best luck finding girls his own age, and that was what he was looking for tonight. There was nothing wrong with older women, of course. In fact, they tended to be more to his taste in terms of personality, but they also tended to take longer to court. As much as Naruto preferred not to think that way, he knew what he was looking for tonight was a simple hookup, and the best place to find that in Santa Fe was a frat party with girls his age. Luckily enough, it was a Halloween, which meant he'd have no trouble finding exactly what he was looking for. He was standing on dance floor at the moment, or at least a living room the frat kids had emptied out and threw some speakers into in order to make a dance floor, leaning up against a wall while he tried to decide which girl he'd speak with. Naruto's search of drunken teenagers brought his attention to something else before long, the kind of thing he refused to ignore. I was just telling you how hot you looked in that outfit. You don't have to be a bitch about it, a wasted frat slob in a police officer costume said to the young lady he was looming over. Don't tell me you come here dressed as like that and didn't expect to get hit on. The girl he was hitting on looked about Naruto's age, with black hair, brown eyes, and tan skin. Naruto was fairly certain she was Hispanic. As to the outfit the frat boy referred to, well that was, ironically enough, a fox costume. It was comprised of black leggings, a fake orange-white tip tail, fox ears, and an orange leotard that hugged her curves. She looked good, no doubt, but she looked equally as pissed with the guy in front of her. You can hit on me all you want, asshole, but it isn't gonna get you anywhere. I'm telling you right now, I'm not interested. Off. Oh, and by the way, a girl deciding she want to look good for the night doesn't mean she wants to sleep with you, dumbus. Oh you. That's like setting a steak in front of a dog and getting made when they try to eat it. Girls like you really are a big fat, cubic gah. That was an insult that would never be finished. Naruto was already behind the drunken moron, spinning him around to grab the college boy by his throat. Once he could no longer speak, Naruto said what was on his mind. You know I really hate that dog analogy. If you train your dog the way you shouldn't have any trouble stopping him from eating anything. All you have to do is tell him no. Now, seeing as you're not deaf, I'm gonna guess you heard this girl say no and just ignored her. That's a real shame because it means I'm gonna have to do something that you can't ignore. Before the drunk idiot could so much as get his hands up, Naruto's fist shot out and decked him, knocking the college boy out in one swift motion. Naruto dropped him and started shaking his head, and I thought college was the place you were supposed to go to learn something. Apparently manners isn't on that list, eh? I guess not, the girl who was being pestered before answered. I could have handled it myself, you know. Naruto shrugged. I'm sure you could have, but I wanted to knock the asshole out myself. I'm Naruto, by the way. Naruto Uzumaki. Aveala, the girl replied. She looked down at her costume and let out a small sigh. This thing isn't even that bad. I mean, it's kinda why I guess, but it was the best looking costume my friend had. She kinda dragged me here last minute. Don't mind the idiot, you certainly aren't a bitch. In fact, I'd say you look more like a vixen. You don't think this thing was your fault, do you? Oh, not a chance in hell. I just can't believe how little it takes to make some guys think you want in their pants. Unfortunately, there was a lot of truth to what Ava said. Yeah, there's a lot of asshole in this world. Your costume does look nice though. Don't let that jerk ruin it for you. I kinda feel like I stick out since I'm not wearing anything special. Ava looked at his leather jacket and white t-shirt and thought out loud, you've got kind of the whole biker thing going on. That's kind of costume. Okay, but am I the get drunk tear up the bar kind of biker, or the I like the freedom of the road and don't want to start anything kind of biker? You'd better be the second one, or you're gonna find out I'm the tear your throat out kind of fox. Naruto could already tell this was gonna be a fun night. Ava talked with Naruto for hours and hours, sticking with each other until the party's end and even doing a little dancing before the night was over. The two of them really clicked with one another, more so than Naruto had ever expected they would. They were still right by each other's sides as they walked out the front door of Fraternity House and down the nearby sidewalk. There was a small smile on Ava's face as they walked, along with a blush on her cheeks. In a small voice, she asked Naruto, so my place or yours? I don't know, Naruto answered honestly. Look, I've gotta be honest with you and say that I don't even live around here. I'm just passing through and thought maybe I could find a one-night thing at this party. If you really want to, I'm totally up for it, but I don't want to trick you thinking I'm trying to start a relationship right now. Ava didn't look disappointed. Who said I was looking for anything? I'm in the right mood and I like you. All I want right now is to spend the night with a nice guy. Dating isn't exactly a priority for me right now. I've got other things to worry about. Something in Naruto's gut wanted him to dig deeper into that last bit of what Ava had said. It seemed like there was more there, and honestly, the way this girl compassed herself led Naruto to believe she was more than an ordinary college student. However, this wasn't the time for that sort of thing. Ava was a nice girl looking for some fun, as long as the fun was with a guy she approved of, and Naruto intended to give it to her. Alright, Ava, if that's what you want, then that's what you'll get. I think it's time for us to head back to my hotel room. Naruto and Ava came crashing into his hotel room with their ass already latched onto each other. They fell back onto the bed, Ava landing on top of Naruto, as their tongues danced around one another, both with more than enough skill to suggest they were no amateurs. Ava felt Naruto's hand slide down to her backside to give it a squeeze, making her break the end. Oh sí. Eso es bueno. Aw, damn that's hot, Naruto groaned, you sound so why when you speak Spanish. Oh really? Ava asked with a smirk. She leaned down beside Naruto's ear and whispered seductively, voy a hacer gritter to placer. Her voice and hot breath on his neck were enough to make Naruto shiver. I don't know what you just said, but I'm game. Ava pressed her ass against his in another searing dot. Naruto continued to slide his hands up and down her smooth muscular body. It was perfectly toned, the kind of body that athletes strived for, only this wasn't the body of an athlete. The places she was toned suggested more of a fighter's build, honestly, with enough muscle mass to do some damage, while keeping certain areas limber enough to dodge and duck quickly. No college student Naruto had ever met had a body that was this well suited to fighting. There was such precision to it that it couldn't help but make Naruto wonder even more who this girl really was. Or at least he would have been wondering that if it hadn't been for the fact that Ava had just pulled his shirt off his body in one swift motion and began down his neck, and her soft S and slick tongue glided across his body with ease, fully recapturing his attention. Ooh, ook. You like that, eh? Ava asked with a devious look in her eyes. Well then tell me what you think of these, and maybe you can return the favor. Ava reached up towards the top of her costume and pulled it down under her, allowing her S to bounce free. Naruto took in the C-cup mounds with perfect pink buds and said with a smile, no brah. I like it. Pretty sure I felt a thong on perfect ass too. Someone's feeling a bit naughty tonight, huh? My bra wouldn't fit under the leotard, and thong was more about avoiding panty lines, Ava corrected before she realized neither of those statements sounded all that why. Quickly recovering from her misspeak, Ava began grinding on Naruto's crotch and jiggled her S in front of his face. But I'm glad you like it, and you'd better be ready for how naughty I'm gonna get with you. One look at the ample beauties in front of him was all Naruto needed to make up his mind about returning the favor. He fed Ava so that she was underneath him and proceeded to mirror the movements she'd done before, grinning up at her as he did. Ava, I hope you didn't plan on sleeping much tonight, cause I wanna worship every inch of the vixen in front of me. You just lay back and relax for now, I'm about to get wild. There was time for Ava to ask what that meant before Naruto got back to work, forcing her mind to be fogged by nothing but pure pleasure. These two were feeling a special kind of connection tonight, the kind that Naruto had only flirted with during his time with She-Hulk and a few others. It was special for Naruto, special enough that he almost wondered if one night was going to be enough. For now it would have to be, and he was going to thank Ava for this incredible night by making it one she would never forget. Eventually night turned to day, and although Naruto greatly enjoyed his time with Ava, he awoke to a familiar sight: an empty bedroom. Ava was gone by the time Naruto woke up, with nothing but a note attached to a small gift on his bed. The gift was an orange pair of panties Aya had been wearing the night before, and the attached note read, Dear Naruto, hope you had fun fox hunting last night. I know I did. My number's on the back of this, give me a call sometime. We might get lucky and end up in same town sometime. Hell, you can even call me if you just want to talk. I move around a lot, so I'll be sure and text you all about my adventures. Sincerely your vixen, Ava. Naruto couldn't help but smile at the note. He was sad to see Ava go, seeing as he'd felt one hell of a connection with the girl, but he tried to remain optimistic. Who knew? Maybe he'd see her again one day. All he could do was hope. Right now though, he needed to get out of bed and get back on the road. There was no doubt Laura would be waiting for him. By the time Naruto got out to the parking lot and found his ride, he discovered that Laura was already waiting for him. She leaning up against the bike as he walked towards her. It's about time you got out here. I've been waiting for you forever. What, did you have to say goodbye the girl you were with last night? Naruto couldn't believe she even knew about that. She'd been passed out the last time he checked on her, how'd figure it out. I thought you were sound asleep in your room. I was, until the two of you started going absolutely crazy in there. Oh no, she'd been listening. Naruto cringed when he asked, how much did you hear? CCC. Oh yes Naruto. Dame Maz, Laura cried out, doing a pretty spot-on impression of the noises Ava had been making the night before. Me. Naruto slapped his hand over her mouth as fast as he could. Cut that out. People are gonna hear you. Once the hand was removed for her mouth, Laura fried back, I'm pretty sure they heard plenty last night. You guys were louder than you think you were having, right? That's what I heard in there. Well yeah, Naruto answered like it was the most obvious thing in the world. He realized a split second after that Laura asking the question was more predictable than thought. I guess you growing up in the lab means you never really learn much about that stuff, huh? Laura scowled. She didn't much care for talking about the lab or her upbringing. I learned enough, alright. I mean, I recognized the sound of it and all that crap. And that sound, by the way, kept me up last night. It's pretty irritating, so you'd better not make it a regular thing. If only that was an option, sorry, but I can't do much about that. I might kind of have to have every couple of days. Are you that perverted? No. It's not like that, Naruto defended himself. His anger quickly subsided and let out a short sigh. He knew how ridiculous it had to sound, but he had a way to explain it. Have you noticed that we've been stopping to eat a lot on our way? As in I'm eating almost constantly. Laura nodded. Yeah, I don't know where you put it all though. You're the most in shape guy I've ever seen. Now they were getting closer to Naruto's point. That's because of my metabolism. Part of the whole Ghost Rider deal is that my body needs a whole more of certain things than regular people do. That includes things like eating and my need for release, we'll say. So you've got certain needs that are put into overdrive, Laura summarized. Alright, I can buy that. Is it a science thing, or is it some kind of curse deal? It's a curse, I'm 99.9% sure, Naruto said with a growl. Believe me, the constant need for food is a real pain in the ass. I'm supposed to get more sleep too, but making time for that in the day is impossible, so I had to learn how to do it this weird meditating way, and well, that's a whole other can of worms I can't get into right now. For obvious reasons, Laura had other questions she wanted answers for. Okay, so if don't eat food you'll starve and you don't sleep you'll pass out, those ones are pretty obvious, but what about the thing? What happens if you hold off on that too long? Naruto rolled his eyes at the fact that she went for the one thing he'd said he didn't want to talk about. Things get bad. I start shaking, I can't focus on anything, and whole lot of other crap that isn't fun. 3.5 days is all it takes for me to lose my shit, and jerking off can only do so much for a guy. Eventually, you need something real, you know. Well yeah. If you feed a starving man a grape, he'll be happier, but he'll still be hungry, Laura replied with a shrug. So what do you to make sure you get laid that often? It can't be easy. It's not, but I've got my ways. I mean, no one's suave enough to get the girl every time, so sometimes I've gotta go down a route I'm not really a fan of. Laura raised her eyebrows. This better not be going anywhere I don't like. If I find out you're jumping girls. What? No, never. Naruto screamed before she could finish. His voice was thick with disgust. I get a call girls sometimes if I really need it bad, but I would never resort to forcing myself on anyone. I've got all kinds of shit in place to make sure I never get to a place where I'm even thinking about something like that. No matter what happens or how bad it gets, I'll never do something like that ever. The anger in his voice was as clear as day, but there was something else Laura heard mixed in with it. Fear. A fear that his powers had the potential to make him lose control. Naruto had clearly thought long and hard about doing whatever it took to keep that scenario far, far away. Laura could see why Naruto had been avoiding the subject, and she had a feeling there was more there she hadn't even scratched the surface of yet, so she decided to leave it at that. It was time to go anyways, whatever you say, Naruto. You wanna hop on the bike so we can get the hell out of here already? Naruto nodded, grateful too for the chance to put his mind on other things. Yeah, definitely. Go ahead and hop on. We should be able to get a little more than halfway there by the time the day's over. Hope you're ready for an intense ride. Isn't that something you said to your buddy last night? Just get on the damn bike. Nothing could beat the feeling Naruto got from riding down the highway on his motorcycle. The way the wind blew through his hair and the power of the machine underneath were like nothing else in the world to him. If didn't need to eat or sleep, or he probably wouldn't have bothered getting off the damn thing. Naruto would just kick back and watch the world go by. The idea of kicking back wasn't one Naruto would have for long. Some of the cars he'd passing without much concern for up until now were starting to make him nervous. Not because they looked special in any ways, quite the opposite in fact. It was the fact that 3 black vans all with the same kind of rectangular body had formed a short triangle around him that had Naruto taking notice. Their speed was carefully matched Naruto's, with no attempts to pass or fall behind him in any way. It must have bothered Laura, who was sitting Naruto with her arms wrapped around his waist, as well, because she whispered his ear, "This doesn't seem right, there's no way it's just a coincidence." Agreed, Naruto replied, his eyes moving between the various vans. Questions is, are these guys here for you or for me? They wouldn't have to wait long for their answer. The van closest to them opened one of its back doors, revealing a man in body armor holding an automatic rifle. He had it aimed directly at Naruto and Laura, and on his shoulder was the infamous Hydra logo. Laura let out a small sigh. It's me, and if they bothered with all this, I'd bet you anything they brought out. Donald Pierce, at your service, a male voice called from inside the open van. There was a hint of a southern drawl to the way he spoke. The man himself, Donald Pierce, stepped into view just next to the Hydra soldier. For the most part, he looked like a normal man, just over 6 feet tall with dark hair that's starting to gray. He had a decently muscular frame that was covered in black combat armor and wore a pair of circular sunglasses with red lens. Most importantly of all though was his right arm. That particular limb of Donald's was entirely robotic. Altogether, this made up the image of man Naruto could already tell was going to prove dangerous. Pierce looked all too happy that Naruto had taken notice of that fact. He called once over to his targets on the motorcycle. It was awful naughty of you to run away from home like that, X-23. Should have known that men that made you wouldn't take too kindly to it. Now then, Mr. Ryder, why don't you go ahead and pull over for us? We don't want any trouble, just the girl. "Why don't you go ahead and suck my?" Naruto fired back. "It's either that or getting the hell out of my way, cause you're not getting Laura." Laura started to laugh behind Naruto. Pierce scowled at the way they were laughing off his threats. He turned to the Hydra agent beside him and said, "I'm gonna grab the girl. Soon as I do, unload on that mother in the driver's seat." Just as the Naruto and Laura had expected, this was about to turn into a brawl. Pierce raised his robotic hand, aimed it at his mutant target, and fired. Fired what exactly? His freaking hand, that's what. It shot out of the robot base still on his arm and went flying towards Laura, still connected to said arm by a thick piece of metal wire. In a split second it reached the girl and grabbed her by the tank top. Once Pierce was sure it was latched on tight, he tried to retract his arm and pull Laura right towards him. The next thing Laura knew, her behind was off the seat and her feet were hanging in the air. "Oh, hell no," Naruto screamed at Pierce. With the speed of a gunslinger, Naruto whipped out his chain and sent it right for Laura. It flew towards her ankle, wrapping all the way around it so that Naruto could pull it tight. The result was Laura's body going completely horizontal, with her friend pulling her toward one direction, while Pierce pulled her the opposite direction. Laura looked understandably pissed about the whole situation, but Naruto planned on making sure it would be over shortly. "Alright, asshole, give her back." Naruto steered his bike towards the van and rammed himself into it. His bike was sturdier than whatever metal the van might have been made out of, that much Naruto could damn well guarantee. So, when he struck the other vehicle, he did so with enough force to send the thing skidding and almost run it off the road. Pierce and every Hydra agent were nearly thrown out of onto the harsh asphalt below them. There was no other choice but for Pierce to let go of Laura so he could steady himself. Laura was pulled back onto Naruto's motorcycle with ease, not that the whole experience hadn't left her shaken. "Son of a bitch. We are never doing that again. I'm not made for a in-game of tug of war." "Sorry about that," Naruto said, though his eyes were still focused on the van he just rescued her from. The man driving it was starting to regain control, and he sure as hell wasn't going to finish if the duo on the motorcycle had anything to say about it. "We've got to take out the tires on that thing. I wanna lose Pierce as soon as we can. Just get me clothes and I'll take care of the rest." Behind him, Naruto could hear Laura extending her claws. He grinned, drove them as close to the van as they could get, and just waited. Laura leaned to the side, her adamantium claws gleaming in the sunlight, and stabbed the man in the driver's seat before releasing another claw in her foot that she used to slash the tire. The rubber gave way to van's rims underneath, sparking flying from it as scraped against the asphalt. This time when the van started skidding out of control, it had no chance of coming back. Both Naruto and Laura could hear Pierce screaming to the men around him, "You idiots. How hard is it to keep one mutant from slashing your tires?" That was more or less the response they'd been expecting. What they hadn't been expecting was Pierce's robotic hand to come flying out of the van so it could latch on to the other van behind them. Just before his ride went fully spinning out of control, the wire in Pierce's arm pulled to another. He clung to the moving vehicle with ease, his hair blowing in the wind as the van grew closer to Naruto and Laura. Irritating as it may have been, Naruto couldn't help but be a little impressed. "Damn, he's good." "You bet your ass he's good," Laura growled. There was no attempt to hide her hatred for the man. "Donald Pierce is the best mutant hunter in the country, maybe even the world. Bastard thinks tracking down people like me is just a fun pastime. When I busted free from Hydra, he was the first call. Don't let the way his hand looks fool you. It's just a trick to make you think that's the only part of him that isn't human. Trust me, he's got plenty of other stuff hidden under his skin." Naruto had no doubt she was correct. It was looking more and more like it was time for Naruto to get in full-blown rider form, then it's time for him to see what Hellfire can do. "I'd hold on tight if I were you. This ride's about to get real bumpy." Before Laura's eyes, flame engulfed Naruto's skin and his body began to change. She got a front row seat to watch as he became the same thing that tore the hell out of the wrecking crew just days earlier. Only this time, it wasn't just his body that changed. His bike began to morph as well, turning from orange to jet black, while the wheels literally caught on fire, not that it seemed to do any damage to them. Naruto's chain was burning and at the ready, just waiting to tear through something at any second. The Ghost Rider had officially arrived. "Oh, you have got to in with me," Pierce growled. He smacked the driver's side window and screamed to the man driving, "Hey. Nobody told me this was the kind of shit we'd be dealing with. I would have brought a whole new game plan if I knew a goddamn Ghost Rider was gonna be here." The Hydra agent driving the van didn't seem to know what to say. "We didn't know either, Mr. Pierce. We swear. Whether you knew or not, me and your boss need to have a discussion about my price and what I've got to work with. Till then, you're on your own." Before there was any chance to bargain with the man, Pierce let go of the van and used his arm to grapple onto another vehicle. This one was an old, beat-up pickup truck that was white and covered in rust. It wouldn't stand out much, which made it that much more perfect. Pierce latched onto it, pulled himself to the passenger side door, and smashed in the window. He didn't waste a second before climbing inside and throwing the elderly man who'd been driving it right out his own door while the truck was still moving. That old man's screams were the last thing anyone heard from Pierce's direction before he did an undoubtedly illegal U-turn and vanished in the other direction. With their leader gone, the last remaining action the Hydra agent in the driver's seat could take was to look forward, and he immediately wished he hadn't. The blazing chain of the Ghost Rider was coming right for him, and it would have no mercy. It was stretched out far enough to reach the van behind him too, and that was for a reason. In one uninterrupted motion, the chain sliced the vans into two pieces in one horizontal motion. Obviously, if it could cut through the hardened metal of a car, soft human flesh was no match for it. Each agent in both vans were sliced apart just like their ride had been. If nothing else, at least they all died instantly. Holy shit, Laura muttered as she watched the massacre. Both vans, or their pieces to be more precise, went flying to left, crashing safely in grassy area where it would harm no one. Naruto had been sure to use as much force as possible with his swing, solely to ensure the carnage wouldn't go rolling back into the road and hurt an innocent bystander. A hell of display overall, one Laura couldn't stop herself from being impressed by. I've heard stories about you doing stuff like that, but seeing it up close, damn. If there's one thing I'm good at, it's destroying shit. We'd better get off the road before I've got to tear up anything else. Don't want anyone to get caught in our crossfire. Laura nodded, good call. Let's stop at a diner or something so we can get some food too. You just read my mind. You, Strucker. You can't put any of this on me, Pierce screamed into his phone as paced the empty cornfield he ditched the truck in. You wanna blame someone for what just happened. Blame the dumbass you paid to get me information, because they left out a pretty massive detail when they briefed me. On the other line, Baron von Strucker, one of the top men in Hydra's chain of command, let out a sigh. Yes, the Ghost Rider. His appearance was unfortunate, but it does not excuse you leaving me men behind to be ripped to shreds to that monster. I wasn't leaving them behind, I was getting out while the jetting was good. No one way hell would I have survived a fight with that fiery son of a bitch with the tools I had. Your men were dead the second they went in there. Me Joe and M wouldn't done either of us any good. Strucker couldn't deny his logic, I suppose not. However, we've already paid you a great deal of money to retrieve X-23. You can't back out on our agreement now. Wasn't planning on it, Pierce replied, shoving more corn stalks out of his way while he tried to find his way towards the road, but I expect a nice juicy bonus for everything I've had to deal with when the dust start to settle. And I'm gonna need better tools to work with if I'm gonna pull this thing off. Think you can handle that much? One could almost hear Strucker's smile on the other end of call. We'd be happy to provide you with whatever you need, Mr. Pierce. Just bring our girl back. Call me once you've made up your mind about what all you'll need, The line went dead before Pierce could answer, not that it mattered. Everything that needed to be said already had been. Pierce shoved his phone into his pocket and kept walking until he found his way out into open air. He was in the middle of nowhere, some small farm town that smelled like cow shit, and didn't plan to stay for long. It was time to get back to base to regroup and do what he did best, hunt freaks like X-23. Did the Ghost Rider make that a little harder? Maybe, but Pierce always loved a challenge. The diner Naruto and Laura decided to stop at was nothing special. It was an old school sort of place, with all the old school amenities you would expect. Gaudy red booths around white tables, a countertop with swiveling stools, an old school jukebox in the corner, and a waitress in an apron who took your order on a pad of paper and poured you cup after cup of coffee. A decent enough place to stop for some food, even it wasn't exactly a 4-star restaurant. Naruto and Laura arrived just before breakfast ended, something they were both plenty happy about, and both ordered the classic American breakfast. That meant over easy eggs, toast, hash browns and bacon. They ate before they spoke, since both of them were too damn starved to put it off any longer. Only once their bellies were nice and full and they had more fresh coffee in front of them did they begin talking strategy. Okay, so Hydra managed to track you down, Naruto said, tapping his finger on his coffee mug. Any idea how they did it? Laura shrugged. Donald Pierce knows what he's doing, that's all I can say. If I had to guess, I'd say he had some his hacking connections tracking me through camera footage and stuff like that. You get the right hacker, and all you really need is a face and general area. Following somebody from there is a piece of cake. That concept wasn't as foreign to Naruto as Laura might have thought. He'd had plenty of targets involved in one area or another of the tech industry, in particular when he had to track down some dumbasses who worked for Justin Hammer, and the things these guys could do was utterly insane. If Naruto had to guess, he'd say Laura's assumption was probably correct, which made things a lot more complicated for them. Well shit, if that's what this is, we're gonna get Ed every time your face hits a camera. I got a guy I can call, goes by Micro, he can probably hook us up with a route that'll avoid any cameras, but it'll make our trip a lot longer. Why don't we just kill these assholes? They had the advantage of surprise before and we still kick their asses. Maybe, but there's the collateral damage to consider. I'm all for giving Hydra what they deserve, but I don't want any innocent people getting caught in the crossfire. Laura gave a small nod, not a bad point. Plus, now that they know what they're dealing with, they'll probably hit us even harder next time. I'd usually be good making this trip on my own, but if things are gonna get this nasty, a little backup couldn't hurt. Agreed, Naruto said, tipping his cup in respect of the girl's skills. He took a small sip of coffee before he asked, so what do you want to do now? Head somewhere safe, call your guy, Micro, and avoid Hydra and Pierce until they give us no other choice. Naruto downed the rest of his coffee and slammed his mug on the table. He took out his wallet and took out enough cash for the bill, along with a generous tip. Sounds like a plan. Let's get on the bike and get the out of here before Pierce shows up again. That reminds me, how did that head get into mutant hunting anyways? Seems like kind of niche line of work, doesn't it? The question brought a scowl to Laura's face. Pierce doesn't think mutants are any better than animals. It's like sport hunting far he's concerned, and we're the most worthy prey there is. Well, isn't that a nice load of bullshit? You'll get your crack at him one day. Today though, it's time to get regroup and strategize. You ready to go? Laura finished her coffee in one gulp and jumped up. Definitely. Then let's ride. Finding a hotel proved easy enough. There had been plenty of choices, but in the end Naruto and Laura went with the nicest hotel they could find that was out of view of any cameras. It was roughly as nice as the first one, which was fortunate, considering they were going to have to wait there a while Naruto's guy found the safest way for them to get to the Xavier Institute. They'd only gotten in a half day's worth of travel, but they both knew they'd get even less traveling done if they had stop every half an hour to take out some Hydra agents. This was definitely the better route. Laura had just stepped out of her ground floor room to get some fresh air a couple of minutes ago. She was leaning against the smooth white wall behind her, watching the random people who passed her by. The ones her eyes lingered on the most were the children clinging to their parents' hands, skipping along like it was the most natural thing in the world. On the other hand, there were the teens who looked at their parents like some kind of plague they had to escape from for the sake of their lives, something Laura could never bring herself to look at for long. "What are you doing out here?" came the voice of Naruto, startling Laura. She must have jumped because the next thing Naruto said was, "Sorry, didn't mean to scare you." "It's fine. I was off in my own little world." Naruto nodded and leaned up against the wall next to her. "Yeah, I've been there. Doesn't take much for your mind to just wander off." "No it doesn't," Laura agreed. She stole a glance over at Naruto and noticed his clothes were wrinkled and his hair was messier than usual. There's some stick on his collar too, prompting a raised eyebrow from Laura. "Naruto, is there someone in your room with you?" The blush tint Naruto's cheeks. Well, yeah. I wanted to make sure I took care of my problem one more time before we go underground. Micro said they'll probably start looking for me the same way they're looking for you, so I won't be able to go out in public either. Since there's no call girls on the way to New York that I trust, this is my last chance to scratch that itch, you know. Sure is there girl in there right now, call girl? Naruto wasn't used to talking about this kind of thing. He scratched the back of his head and replied, "Yeah, a pretty pricey one. I spend a little extra to make sure I'm getting girls who are doing this kinda stuff willingly and not getting the crap kicked out by some asshole pimp." It felt strange to think it, but Laura found she could respect that, at least to an extent. She couldn't help but notice something though. "It's weird that I didn't hear you screaming this time. You nearly knocked down the walls with that last girl." "What?" "Oh, I tried to keep things down for you this time. The thicker walls helped too." That true, or was the lady in there just really disappointed with her ride on the Ghost Rider? Between the terrible pun and smirk on Laura's face, Naruto could tell she was just giving him shit. This was the first time Naruto could remember her making a proper joke, so he decided to give one right back to her, to let assure Laura he liked seeing this side of her. "I'll have you know that I had to fight just to get her to take my money. Maybe she just felt bad for you." Naruto roared with laughter. "Oh, and she brings out the claws. Better tread lightly, or I'll start tearing into your life." It seemed Naruto had forgotten something pretty major about Laura. "Hello, I grew up in a lab and only just escaped. I don't have a life." "Oh right," Naruto said with a cringe, "sorry." Laura shrugged and turned back towards her room. "What's done is done. I'm out now, and I plan on experiencing everything I missed while Hydra had me locked away." "Glad to hear that," Naruto grinned. He turned back towards his own room and said, "If you need help with any of it, don't hesitate to ask me." "I won't," Laura replied before Naruto vanished into his hotel room. Since the call girl hadn't left yet, Laura was pretty sure Naruto intended to spend some more time with her. He'd shown Laura a sort of kindness that she'd never experienced before. Sure, Naruto got around a lot, but it didn't sound like he was ever dishonest about his intentions. More than that, it sounded like he wanted a real relationship, but Mephisto's curse made that more than a little difficult. Needing to have every couple of days would be a difficult thing for a girl to keep up with, or at least Laura imagined it was. Actually, Laura found she liked imagining that scenario. In fact, she liked imagining herself in that scenario. She liked it quite a lot. The next thing the girl knew, she disappeared into her room with a blush on her face. She'd find herself unable to resist putting her ear up Naruto's bedroom wall to see if she could hear him and his call girl. She most certainly could, and after discovering that, her instincts would lead her to s a hand under her pants and discover something else for the first time. Before her mind was lost to her first taste of carnal pleasure, Laura started to wonder if she and Naruto were the strangest group ever to undertake this kind of trip together. The person who could have made the biggest argument against that had just woken up. Said person was Hinata Hyuga, who currently found herself in a motel bed, much like Laura. She'd been sleeping quite some time, trying to recover from the exhaustion of the last 2 days or so. What had happened in those past 2 days to make her so tired? Well, Mephisto magically appearing in the bloody scene left behind in these woods might have surprised anyone else, but at that point, there wasn't a whole lot the demon could do that would even make Hinata raise an eyebrow. Right now, she was simply pissed. She'd returned to her normal form, clothing and all thanks to her powers, and that allowed Mephisto to see exactly how pissed. Hinata stomped towards Mephisto, waving an accusing finger in the air. "You've got a lot of shit too to answer for." "Doesn't everyone?" Mephisto asked with a shrug. Hinata wasn't amused. "My friends and I nearly died back there. What the hell were thinking just throwing us into a situation like that? We'd been here all of 5 seconds. I thought it would help you manifest your powers more quickly, and that's exactly what it did. You should have seen yourself back there. You're going to be a real natural at this whole Ghost Rider thing." Ripping Mephisto's head off was a proposition that was becoming more and more tempting to Hinata. Ghost Rider? What in the hell is that? Mephisto hadn't come here for series of long, drawn-out explanations. In fact, he'd taken steps to avoid doing exactly that. "You'll get the full story when you get settled into whatever you decide to stay for the night. I'll leave you a book, or manual I suppose, that'll explain everything you could ever want to know about our new deal. Suffice to say though, you've proved to me here tonight that you'll make quite the capable bounty hunter. A bit overzealous I suppose, but that can fixed." "Overzealous?" Hinata repeated before Mephisto motioned over to the dead Wendigo. She had almost forgotten. "Oh, right. You were hoping I'd get him alive. Don't worry. It was mostly to test your skills, which it did quite nicely. No major loss. Speaking of the Wendigo, what exactly is your dog doing with it?" Mephisto interrupted himself as he pointed to Akamaru. Said dog currently had a bloody muzzle and was noisily chewing on something, only now the girls noticed the Wendigo's left calf was missing. "Akamaru. Spit that out," Kiba ordered, her companion immediately doing so. She then turned to the others and said, "Sorry, I didn't get a chance to feed him dinner before we left, and I usually let him hunt his own food when we're on missions." Mephisto shrugged. "It makes sense. Dimensional transportation tends to drain an individual. It's more what he's eating that worries me." Any further conversation was halted when the white dog started coughing, blood staining the snow in front of him. Kiba immediately went to help her dog, only for Mephisto to clamp a hand on her shoulder. "Hold on, this could be interesting," the demon stated, a glimmer of curiosity in his eyes. The group continued to watch, too unwillingly, as Akamaru coughed more and more. Then several cracks were heard as the dog's limbs contorted into unnatural shapes and angles. Slowly paws became hands, and the pup's tail disappeared. Kiba couldn't stand to watch her companion being twisted like this. She screamed as Mephisto, "He's in pain, you asshole. Do something. Leave him be. Same goes for you, Hinata, there'll be hell to pay if you try and step in." Kiba wanted to turn around and smack him, but the vice grip he had on her shoulder prevented it. After another 30 seconds of agony, silence reigned. Just as suddenly the beast threw up its head and howled, sounding much like the dead Wendigo, and looking much the part with its red eyes and white fur. However, one key defiance was the short snot percent. Mephisto just smiled as he said, "Congratulations girl, your dog just managed to surprise me for the first time in a millennia." Hearing the howl, Hinata acted on instinct, shifting into her rider form and advancing towards the beast, only for Kiba to throw off Mephisto's hand and step in front of her friend. "Wait." Kiba pleaded, "He's still Akamaru, I can see it in his eyes." Slowly she approached the beast, who now hunched on his limbs, and held out a hand. After a moment the new Wendigo gently rubbed his face on Kiba's hand, and before licking her palm. "See, he's had control of his instincts all his life, and new body isn't going to change that." Despite the reassurance, Hinata stayed in her rider form, just Incus. Seeing her friend still on edge, Kiba turned her attention to the last member of the meeting and demanded, "Change him back." "And just why would I do that?" he challenged. "My rider has proven herself, and now I have an already trained Wendigo for my plans. I have all I need. I'll work for you. Kiba offered. At seeing Mephisto raise an eyebrow in interest, she elaborated, change him back, let us stick with Hinata, and I'll work with you for however long it takes to repay the debt. You can make it so Akamaru can go Wendigo whenever he wants to, so you still get the Wendigo. It's a complete win for you, you give up nothing and gain another contract. After a brief moment the man snapped his fingers, a contract appearing before Kiba, you're a hell of a negotiator, girl. Sign on the dotted line. Without hesitation Kiba cut her thumb and used her blood to sign away her soul, Mephisto's grin only growing as she did so. Once the transaction was complete, Mephisto snapped his fingers and the contract transformed in a ball of white light that hovered in the air. It soared past Kiba and hit Akamaru. His red eyes turned brown as the white fur receded into his body. In the span of a few seconds where once a beast stood was a teenager that looked much like Kiba's henge, only lacking the red tattoos and having white hair with small mohawk and a small god. Mephisto didn't seem as shocked by this development as the girls were, only offering a simple question to them. The Wendigo is a beast born from man, did you honestly expect him to go back to being a dog? He then turned to Kiba and said, as for you, well I need to protect my investment, so here's a little freebie that's been locked in your genes for far too long. Once the man snapped his fingers Kiba sharp felt pain in her jaws and fingernails. They began to grow, turning into a set of claws and fangs fit for a feral predator. Next, brown fur grew all across her body. Although she felt like passing out, the Inyazuka woman remained conscious, although her clothes were shredded by her new features. Giving the demon a glare, Kiba spat out, you bastard. I just shaved my legs. Mephisto only chuckled in amusement as he turned his back on the group, don't worry, you'll be able to change your form just like Akamaru now can. As much fun as this was, I really must be going. You'll find a hotel and a change of clothes on the edge of the woods. You'll find the book I had mentioned before there as well, with some added chapters to explain Kiba's and Akamaru's new gifts. You may need to sneak in if you don't want to give the other guests a private show. The demon gave one more Cheshire grin before vanishing in flash of flame. Kiba wondered aloud, is there any way this day could possibly get more batshit insane? Kiba Akamaru spoke up for the first time since his transformation. His voice was still bit tentative, as the very act of talking still felt foreign to him. His voice was a deep baritone, I'm cold. Kiba could only fathom. Her dog was now human, she had some kind of freaky powers she didn't understand, and her wife was some kind of demonic bounty hunter. When life threw that much shit at you, sometimes getting the simplest things done were all you could do. Come on, Hinata, let's go get Akamaru some pants. Thanks for watching this video. If you really enjoy this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. Don't forget to support and follow Toby Wants a Cookie for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story link in the description. See you in the next video. Goodbye.